Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. Today I wanted to show you how I rebuilt my master cylinder and I cleaned up the brake booster on my 75 Civic. I'm definitely not an expert, so if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. So what you're looking at right now is exactly how I pulled it off the car. Now, I didn't record pulling it off the car, but it's just like any new car. There's two studs and with some nuts that it slides on, and then there's the two lines that come out. The nuts came off just fine. Those were 12 millimeter. Used a 12 millimeter wrench. The lines I decided to just cut off. I didn't want to risk stripping anything, so I just cut the lines off because I knew I was going to be replacing the lines anyway. So once I had that out, I brought it over to a metal tub that I had, and I used a toothbrush and a fingernail brush that they sell at the auto parts store. I just wanted to kind of get some of the grease and gristle off of the master cylinder, just so I didn't have to, I was trying not to spread the dirt, spread the grease, So that worked pretty okay for what it was. The next thing I did was, of course, pull the caps off, and there's floats in there. I couldn't find any rebuild kits online at first, and so I just bought a new master cylinder, and you'll see it later in the video. But the bodies, the main bodies of it, just have a good amount of difference to them, and so I was really hoping to be able to fix the old master cylinder. And so, of course, that started with confirming that the new parts that were inside the master cylinder matched the rebuild kit for the old master cylinder. The new master cylinder, of course, came apart really easily, and I did confirm. I was not able to actually measure because I did not have the rebuild kit with me, but just based on pictures, it looked a lot like the rebuild kit. And then once I was able to remove the internals of the old master cylinder, so what I started doing next was just taking the old one apart. I started with the reservoirs just because they're the most, obvious ones. One of the screw clamps came loose pretty easily. The other one didn't. It started to come loose, but then I think there was just too much rust buildup on the threads and it got stuck. So I ended up getting it loose enough just to rotate, and then I was able to get the other clamp completely off, and I couldn't quite tell how to remove the plastic reservoir piece. So I went inside and I double checked the diagram that I've shown earlier, and I noticed there wasn't really anything in there, so I decided to just try and rotate it. I did attempt to put a little bit of force on it with a pry bar, and it really wasn't doing anything other than starting to tear it up a little bit. So I stopped that immediately and I just went for the twist, and it came right off. So the next thing I did was remove the lines. You'll notice I started to tighten it at first. A lot of times when you got something that's threaded into aluminum, it comes apart easier if you start to tighten it just a smidge and then start to loosen. Now that thinking about it, though, I realize that those are steel threads because of those screwed in pieces, but at the time I must have not been thinking about it. So the next thing I did was I removed the snap ring and the washer. Now I knew that the piston was stuck because after I removed it, I tapped on the brake pedal and it had no resistance, and so I knew that the part of the system that was stuck was because of the master cylinder. So I wasn't expecting to move it, but to get it out, you had to take that out anyway. So I apologize for the mess. I was working on powder coating the center caps for the car. It didn't turn out so well, but to get back on topic, at this point I had realized that the output, where the output lines were at, there's actually more parts in there, and so this is when I went to take it apart. I had been letting it soak in ATF, so that's why. What's up with the red fluid on the paper towel? Those are 21 millimeter bolts, so I had to go out and buy a wrench. I didn't have one that size, So, but otherwise they came loose pretty well. Didn't really have to fight with them. So at this point, the only thing left assembled was the pistons. So I let it soak for a while, and then I tried some compressed air again, and it just wasn't doing anything. So what I ended up doing was I was going to drill and tap a hole in the piston, and then use a bolt and a nut as a puller to try and pull it out. And if it didn't seem like it was going to work, I was just going to leave it like that and let it soak, because I figured with a little bit of pressure on it, it'll be more likely to budge. I didn't end up needing to do that. As soon as I started to tap the hole, it rotated, and then I just pulled up on the tap and it slid right out. For the primary piston, I just put a little compressed air in there and it shot out. I should have turned the compressor down more because I can't find it. So at this point, everything's disassembled, so I went ahead and I laid it all out. Here's the diagram for comparison, and I started with the reservoirs, just kind of working at my way down from the top. I just started wiping them off with a paper towel. Most of it was pretty clean. I couldn't get down into the corners very well, so what I ended up doing was I just grabbed an old dish sponge and used that with some water, and it came off pretty well. Next was the floats. I just had to wipe them off with a paper towel. Everything came right off. There wasn't really much grease or anything, and they were in the sealed reservoir, so nothing really had built up on them. Next was the rubber caps. I removed the plastic rings on there and I cleaned them up separately. However, I did leave the number 10 and number 9 on the diagram. Those I left together. I just used the same dish sponge to take all the dirt off the rubber, and then they were kind of dull looking, and I was trying to figure out a good way to shine them up, and I was thinking, and I remembered the tire shine that I had for washing my car, so I figured I'd give it a shot. I think it turned out nicely. I'm not sure how long the finish will last, but it is under the hood, so it's not in the sun, so it might last a little bit longer than it usually does on the tires. We'll just have to find out. For the rings that say to use .3 brake fluid, I just washed them in the sink, same as I did with the rubber cap. Turned out pretty good. And then you just have to peel up the lip on the top of the rubber cap and slide it around the edge, and it'll go on. So next, I sandblasted the body of the master cylinder. The internals looked really good, so I just cleaned the outside, finished cleaning the outside, and then after that I blasted the hardware, including the clamps for the reservoir. And like I mentioned earlier, I bought new screws. You can see them installed now. And I replaced the crush washers with some copper ones. And then for the check valves, I just wiped them down and made sure they were clean, along with the springs. I didn't want to alter any of the characteristics, and I didn't really want to order new ones. And the ones that were in the new master cylinder didn't match the old ones, and so I couldn't just use those. So I just cleaned them up as best I could without using the sandblaster. And then from there on, it's just assembly. Once the master cylinder was assembled, I was looking at the brake booster and it was looking pretty crusty, so I decided to pull it off and just clean it up. I didn't have a rebuild kit or anything, so I just wanted to clean it up. The front half of it is aluminum, so I just stuck it in the sandblaster and blasted it off. The back half is actually steel though, so I cleaned it off as well, but I went ahead and I painted it just like a semi-gloss or satin or whatever, black. I think it turned out pretty good. And then once I was dry, I reinstalled everything. Installation of the brake booster was pretty easy. It's just 4 bolts to the firewall, a pin that connects to the brake pedal lever, and then the master cylinder has the 2 studs in the front, so I put that back on, and then the hose to the booster, since I hadn't the other side that the hose attaches to, I didn't replace it yet. So I just put a vacuum cap on there and then used the hose clamp on it. And then I took the caps to keep the dirt out of the lines out of the new one, and I stuck them in the old one, and it's all just sitting under the hood now. So now I just need to work on the rest of the brakes, and then hopefully we'll be able to stop. With that, I'm going to go ahead and log off. I'll talk to you guys later.